because, it's always easy to think of something else as other until you're in it. And then it's like, oh, it's not those people. It's just these are, they're all these people that are names and faces with stories and backgrounds and dreams and ambitions and hopes. And it's like, that's who the film industry is.
Guys, today we have Dave and Morgan Hansow on our show today. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. Dave and Morgan are just amazing friends of mine, and we've been friends for several years now. And we actually worked together back in the day in documentary stuff, and then reconnected when we were living up in Northern California. And yeah, you guys are awesome. And yeah, Dave and Morgan are just crushing it right now. They're working on 15 different pieces of content, from documentary to episodic to feature films. So yeah, they're just crushing it right now. And yeah, it's good to have you guys here.
Thank
Good
you.
to be here.
Thanks for
Good
having
to see all of you.
And we're all friends. Jordan, George, we all have worked together in the past, so we're all family. So
Yeah.
The last time I will say that the last time I saw Dave and Morgan on both of you guys on set, but Dave was pulling his hair out mad at Garrett because Garrett was as always just wanting to do another take, and Dave was like, "We don't have time."
I think it was the first time me and Dave actually got in like a fight.
It was.
It
was great.
Time. I don't think we've been in one since, but
it was great. Steve and I were just literally like we were just watching Dave, and Dave was just like, you could see him just going melting, and Garrett just as a director just I think I want to do one more take. Yeah, it was comedy. I'm sure not for you, Dave, it was, but for the rest of us on set, we were having a good time watching you two interact.
That's funny.
Well, Garrett and I are both like pretty mellow. Like, it takes a lot to get either one of us. Like, we're pretty similar in that. Like, we're both really just kind, nice, like pretty go lucky. So it takes a lot. And it was like, we were like 2-3 hours behind schedule of a 1-day shoot. And I'm like, well, what is happening? Take 7? We had take 7. We got the first 2 were done.
Oh,
but he was directing, and so we let it go. Anyway,
and I think we kind of got back on track, though. I think we ended up.
Amazing.
Yeah, it worked out.
But yeah, we ended up having some pretty ambitious shots that we pulled off pretty well. So it was a music video that we directed and they produced. So
no, that was the that day.
It was the short film.
Yeah.
Yeah, short film.
Yeah.
So those were like 2 or 3 days in a row. I don't know why we did that, but yes, it worked.
That was fun.
Well, yeah, like, so kind of going backwards in time a little bit, you guys have had a lot of documentary experience, and talk about your experience in that field and what that looked like for you guys over the years.
I mean, just kind of how we stumbled into film.
Yeah, like how you stumbled into it and how it kind of all started for you guys.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, go for it.
So Dave and I we go way back to high school. We've been married 22 years. And right after we graduated from college, which neither one of us went to film school, Dave has a philosophy and Eastern religion degree, and my degree is in human development and family studies. So, very non-traditional in that. And also, right when we graduated college, we went into ministry for a while. So Dave was an area director for Young Life, and we had gotten pregnant and had our first kid. And then when we decided to grow a family, we were going to grow it through adoption. We ended up moving to Africa to adopt our daughter, and then started an NGO there. And through that, we realized, we had a point where we needed to tell some stories, and we jumped into what we thought was going to be some short films and vignettes with some really talented filmmakers. It turned into a feature documentary that ended up taking us around the world to film festivals and winning best documentary in some places. And then that kind of changed the trajectory of our lives once we ended up stepping away from the projects in Uganda and handing them over to another organization, we decided to pursue film full time because we realized that film, when done well with cinematic excellence, can actually really impact people. So that's kind of how we ended up in film. And then we did documentary filmmaking for 12 years.
I have nothing to add to that. That's great. Yes. That is how. Actually, I should say the real reason we got into it was we were 26 years old. We had 120 employees in Uganda, and we had a lot of pressure on our shoulders to grow it and to sustain those incomes. And so film was one of the best ways that could get shared to a lot of people at once. We only had so many aunts and uncles and grandparents and brothers and sisters to invite into this story, and we needed it to spread, and it did because of that film.
Wow. Do you guys feel like working in the documentary space, how has that impacted you guys kind of moving and working in the narrative space?
It's interesting. Go ahead. I have a thought, but you go.
Oh, I bet we're going to say similar things.
Yeah, sure.
Documentary forces you to wear a ton of hats. Usually it's very small crew. Even when we're producing something or we're even in front of the camera, not behind the camera, but in front of the camera, we're lugging, Pelican cases around India or Africa or wherever we're filming around the world. And so you get to know all aspects of filmmaking really quick because you have to. Especially documentaries that are you're traveling, you're going places. The film isn't coming to you, so you have to bring everything with you, and so inherently you have to be small and a tight group. And so we learned about kind of, I think, every position in filmmaking more than we even probably knew until we moved to Hollywood, and then we realized, there's a lot of people, producers, who have a very singular focus, who actually have never done any of this. They only know how to do this one thing, and it definitely gives us an appreciation for the other crew members, for sure.
Yeah, and just also like questioning, do you really need to have like all these different, like, do we really need to have one person dedicated to that? Because that, on the producing side, you start to think like that because you know that you can do stuff on a nimble crew, a small crew, good people who are willing to work hard and bust their ass, and you can get maybe more done than having a bunch of positions and a bunch of people sitting around and waiting in between. So it's like, yeah, we've learned that way, and in some ways it's nice and freeing to come here and be like, oh, there's a person for that, Also, that's also frustrating because I feel like we can be more efficient or
Yeah. Go ahead.
Just real quick, I had a question, and I think it kind of will roll into some stuff going forward. But just for our audience sake, I'm curious. Obviously, most of them, some of them may know you, some of them may not. But if you guys would maybe even just share what it is you guys do, have done. Obviously, you guys have wear a lot of different hats. But what is it that you guys have done and do even love to do now in filmmaking as far as your guys' roles?
Oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Well, for the most part, Morgan and I co-produce pretty much everything together. There are a couple different projects where she's kind of more of a lead, or I'll just come in when I can, and vice versa. But for the most part, it's together. But yeah, for 12 years, we mainly did docs and doc series. So we had that first feature we mentioned. It got distribution. We were on the Oprah show because she saw it. Years and years ago. And then we worked on a travel series with our family where we traveled around the world. We had 3 seasons of that. And as it got distribution again, we were just re-inspired to go oh yeah, we should continue to make and tell stories like this. And then we've been hired on a handful of other projects and some of our own. And then in the last 3-4 years, we moved to LA. And Morgan, you want to share more kind of about what that's looked like?
Yeah, we moved to LA to continue to pursue more in the film world, and not just for us, but our 2 kids who are now grown ish. Our son is 18 and he just started his freshman year at Chapman Yeah, so he's going to film. He got into the film school there for cinematography. So he's in, week 3 at college, and then our daughter acts as well. So we moved down to LA, for them to continue to pursue their passions in filmmaking, and then for Dave and I to continue to pursue ours. And so that's kind of not necessarily like fully transitioned. We're open to doing docs still, and obviously it has a place in our hearts, like good documentary storytelling. But also to get into narrative. So we're in beginning year 4 in LA. So we spent the last 3 years kind of getting into the narrative world, whether that's being EPs on projects. When we first got here, it was COVID, so we were doing EPKs, which is electronic press kit, and BTS behind the scenes stuff on a few sets. We've done other producing, and yeah, and then we're just in development on a lot, like 15 different things. And that just means we're having meetings all the time, having Zooms all the time, putting together budgets and finance plans, and just all of it.
And Morgan is executive producer of a movie coming out this coming year called Goodrich, which that's with Michael Keaton and Mila Kunis. So that's, of course, a pretty big film.
And Amy Pascal is that how you pronounce her name? Is one of the main producers on it.
Yeah.
Who who produced Spider-Man movies and all that jazz. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's the director. It's her second feature, Haley. Well, she has a hyphen. What's the other? Something Myers. Gosh, I can't even. My brain's. But she's Nancy Myers' daughter, and so the acclaimed writer who's just done so many of the great films that we love, including I Love the Holiday. But yes, that was her daughter's film too. So which is awesome.
And then, oh, sorry, our dog barked. And then, I mean, just to be more specific, yes, we had another romantic comedy that Hulu bought that is on right now. And then we have one that we finished, where Morgan and I are both co-producers on right before the strikes started a few months back. And it was perfect timing for us. And it's just been submitted to 20 plus film festivals and in the last week. So that'll be fun to see what that one ends up doing. So yeah,
so cool.
Yeah, our hands are in a lot of things.
Guys, I have a quick question for you. So you came from a ministry background and starting in documentaries, starting kind of just from that ground level, not really in film school, like you said. I know you said you made a jump to move to LA. I know there's a lot of people, a lot of filmmakers, right, who live kind of all over the country and things, but they want to get into the industry. And a lot of them feel like they have to move to LA or to New York or to one of these hubs. Have you found that, I mean, I know obviously that feels like it's been beneficial for you. Can you talk about that, like about being part of, I guess, your community that you live in? Or how do you, is it required to move to a place like LA to actually get into, like, say, feature narratives and things like
that? Do you want to say it, Morgan, or do you want me to go? It doesn't.
I don't know. I'll be curious to hear. I mean, we could have differing opinions. I don't know what you're going to say.
There is definitely a reality to, there is no chance that we could be doing as many projects and have our hands in this many projects if we didn't live here. And I only say that because half of them are because of just living here and running into people and meeting them at things, or being on set and then you meet them and then they have another project and you come on, I also think it does bring some level of trust that you can run across the town and you have a quick meeting. The reality is movies are 90% meetings until they're not. And so to be able to have so many meetings for months, if not years sometimes on some of these projects, it is hugely beneficial. I say all that and then say, no, it's not necessary to live here at all. But there are huge, huge benefits. One of the biggest drawbacks, of course, is it just costs a lot to live here. That's just true. It's very expensive to live in LA. for us personally, that's the only drawback, though. That we really love everything else about it, including the people we're around and our neighborhood, and all of that kind of stuff. But I don't think it's necessary, but it definitely has helped, and it has accelerated our careers in a way that we could have taken us 10 years. We did in 2 years. I think that's probably the best way to explain it. What would you say that?
Yeah, I would say the same thing, especially as well. I mean, COVID, especially for like the acting world, opened up the industry for self tapes and casting through that. But I mean, I'm kind of partial. I think, like, to piggyback off what Dave said, sure, you can do it, but when you look at the people that we've met and the opportunities had, and even just looking at like the people in our neighborhood. I mean, we live in Burbank, so it still feels a little like suburban. But we're right over the hill to Hollywood in 10 minutes. But if we look at our neighbors, it's like there's a power couple, husband wife duo that are producers who do docs and award-winning docs. We have one of our neighbors down the street, it was EP on the new one in the film or theaters we just saw the other night, Dumb Money. That's like the GameStop movie. The prop master for all of Adam Sandler's films is the street over. There's an NCIS season regular actor that has become a friend of ours since COVID. We met walking dogs. Another one of our neighbors is a husband and wife acting couple. I mean, they don't act together, but one was on like The Good Place. The other one is on the show Warriors. I think that's on Max or HBO. And, we met them walking dogs too. So it's like another one of our neighbors is one of the head animators for Disney. And she's the lead animator on the new movie that's coming out in a couple of months called Wish, which is their 100th year film. So it's like we wouldn't, and that's just our neighborhood. I mean, I'm just talking about like 3 streets. So we wouldn't have got to know those people if they weren't our neighbors. And, having connections and meeting people brings legitimacy and opens doors to future projects and collaborations. So is it necessary? No, but does it give you opportunities that not being here would? I don't know how
Yeah.
You wouldn't.
I really like grammar, so I'm like, oh no. But you couldn't do it if you weren't here. So yeah.
Well, even I remember right when you guys moved, like the kids started becoming extras in movies.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like one of Asher's first movies was Fablemans, the Steven Spielberg movie.
Yeah.
And then Jaden was like in Nope, and you guys were in Winning Time and all these different things. And that happened like pretty quickly. So I think just to have the ability to go on these high level sets and be a part of that and see how it's being done and whatnot is extremely beneficial. So
right. That's true.
Cool.
Yeah. And I've also,
Very true.
We both have taken classes through UCLA Extension in producing, and some of them you don't have to be there in person, which is great. But some of them were like Dave, you had one that was hybrid, or no, was it in person?
Mine was all in person, yeah.
Yeah. But like even just that ability to take advantage of that and has been huge for us too.
Well, yeah, I wanted to chat with you guys. Just a discussion we've had a lot together is just the theme of kind of the finished product of a film, kind of versus the relationships that you're making on set. And I think a lot of filmmakers are always kind of thinking about the end product, and especially if they want to have a message or a theme they're really trying to get across. They're thinking about the impact that's going to make on the audience, which isn't a bad thing at all. But maybe kind of talk about your guys' thoughts on that and why for you guys, like relationship and the relationships you're building on set and just loving the people that you're with. You guys love so well everybody that you're around and work with. So yeah, maybe just chat about that.
Well, yeah, I would say the 2 things I know Morgan's definitely going to say, like we do care. So I want to clarify, we do care about excellence. Like we don't want to work on crappy stuff. Like that is, I wouldn't say it's first and foremost, but it is just as high. But yeah, I think you're right, especially as people who've come from more of a faith background. We haven't really worked in faith uh, um, genre at all, but as people have that as a background. We personally are less interested in the kind of films we create to an extent. Well, clearly, we're not going to create like, I don't even know what that would be, but we care up to a point. But to be honest, what we do care way more about is the people we're around, making sure that that we're good hosts. I mean, with the amount of meetings we even have in our home that I'm in right now on a weekly basis is crazy. Like we have so many different groups of people, right? We just did a read through for a script this weekend with all the cast and all these other, the rest of the film crew for this one, from writers coming over and working through scripts. And so always making sure that they feel, really taken care of and seen and loved. And, they're, as producers, people put a ton of trust in us. They've usually worked on a script for a very long time by the time they pitch it to us. And so, we just want to make sure that we honor that. And then we also make sure that we give them the best product possible as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think the reason too about the house is it's pretty, luckily, like starting in Colorado, I mean, we lived in Colorado for years before we moved to California. And so we were able to purchase our first like townhome in college, and then just keep buying and selling houses as we went along. So it also set us up to, like, when we came to LA, to be in a really unique position to actually purchase a home, which is crazy. Like that's one thing I never thought we would be able to do. But when we looked at what we could invest and put it as a down payment versus even renting, it's like cheaper for us to have a mortgage than to rent in LA, which is insane. Because we were able to build wealth in real estate outside of California before we moved to California. Had we grown up in California, that probably wouldn't have been the case. So we feel really like blessed, and but it's also like that's really rare for people to have a house or a home here. And so to open up our home to people who are coming like for meetings has been huge. They're like, oh, it just feels so good to be like in a home. And, just it feels so homey. And so that's been really huge for us, is just to invite people into like a loving, safe space. And then, I would say, I do care about the finished product, for sure, like cinematic excellence. I just never want to work on projects where I'm like, oh, it's, I don't want to make excuses for the art. So like excellence really matters to me. But I think we also just have, the greatest is like Jesus, like people will know you're my disciples by the way you love. And so that is our standard. And it just looks like something. It looks like being kind. It looks like working hard and serving and going above and beyond. And, we've been on sets where they're like, oh, you're the EP. You don't need to set up that, the pop-up tent, or, why are you carrying the chairs? We're like, no, it's fine. Like we want to help. And they're like, oh my gosh, I've never been on a set where an EP will do that. Or, so it also like, it speaks loudly, because that kind of attitude and behavior is, I guess, rare. But I think, we've also had people approach us and ask us about producing, because they saw the way that we treated people on set and the way that we were kind and loving and accepting. And, much as it is about the art, it's also about, because at the end of it, you have an hour and a half, 2-hour piece of art, but you've spent a whole month together in the trenches alongside each other every day, just working your butts off. And like that's kind of where the magic happens and the relationships are built, and where you forge like the memories, and then also collaborate and have ideas about what's next and dream up new projects together. So for us, that's also a lot of the magic.
That's cool. I love that, even just how you guys talking about how you guys interact on set, and how to some people, the picking up stuff, moving stuff, that's so kind of foreign the film industry has its own pace and its own language and its own kind of like hierarchy. And it's cool because you guys come from a background of not film. And so your perception is a little bit different, but then also just your character shines through of how you guys hold yourself up, and that impacts people. And to me, it kind of leads to my next question is, your background coming in from, again, not from didn't go to film school, not necessarily from a traditional film route. What would you say? What are certain traits, or just even certain lessons, or whatever the case might be, that were maybe some of the hardest to learn, like maybe just hardest to pick up, or whatever the case might be? And then what are some things that you guys felt like, because you didn't have that, really helps you grow and really helps you maybe excel in your spaces producing, and through documentary, even through your narrative work?
Yeah, good question. Let me think. Morgan, do you have anything that stands out?
Yeah, just it's one thing to be in a documentary and, know how to like mic yourself up and, know how you're going to capture stuff in the moment. But then the whole world of narrative where you're staging everything and it's set up and there's so much, for us, it was always get mic'd up and go, because it's just, we're on location filming whatever is happening. It wasn't that you were having to like stage, set design and art design, and you're not really you're not kind of manufacturing, but narrative, you're like fully manufacturing. And so it has been a whole nother world, and learning. I feel like I was very nervous the first set we were on, because I was like, I don't know the lingo. I don't know, so. And I think that was also jumping in immediately to doing some background work. It wasn't that I wanted to be a background, actor, but I wanted to be on bigger sets where I could just be a fly on the wall watching how things were going. So just to get in there and see, okay, like that's what the second AD is doing. That's how what the first AD is like, stepping in and doing this. And, or when, points, means like somebody's coming through with something sharp and you have to get out of the way and watch what you're doing, like just things like that. Or learning, with the apple crates, and what do they call them? Oh my gosh.
Oh, the apple boxes. Yeah.
And
apple boxes.
You have it like hot dog or Chicago or what is it?
Yeah.
Just like you feel like you've been drinking out of a fire hose for like, 2.5 years, just taking it all in, but you slowly learn it,
I would just add that, like, I think something really, really beneficial is actually taking classes. I think taking all the classes we've taken at UCLA, we've realized we've met producers who have worked way longer than us that don't know half of what we're talking about when we say things. And you're like, wow, you've done this forever, and you can fake it, or you can just really stay in your one lane. But Morgan has taken like film law classes, film budgeting classes. I've done pre-production classes, just things that like you're learning from industry pros here who are in the industry right now. Mm-hmm. And so in like a matter of 10 weeks, you've done what some people take years and years to learn. And I'm there's another way of learning, of just being on set, and that's amazing, and I think that's incredible. But I will say that's one of the things that it also just accelerated, I think, our ability to kind of understand what we're talking about when we're in meetings is, some of the classes we've taken.
Yeah. I took a 10-week movie magic budgeting course. So like I can now go through, and I just got done doing a budget. It took me 10 hours, but it's, it's like almost a $3 million movie. And like, I know what I'm doing now, so it's like, and I wouldn't necessarily know that before I jumped in, so
yeah.
I think that has been really helpful. And I think just being creatives beforehand. And I was a writer and had authored, I wrote magazine articles back in the day for Relevant, and did a children's book and some other stuff. So also think our understanding of story has really been helpful, because that's helped us vet scripts and add to projects, give creative input into projects that just help, because nothing. You can't have a great movie without a great script. So it all starts there. So that has also really helped us. And I think that's just something we brought with us from, yeah, just being storytellers in our past life and even in documentary too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I feel like, that's you said that you learned so much through taking these classes, and you almost you said you sped up your time of what it would have taken maybe people 10 years to learn in 10 weeks. And I feel like the world has kind of exploded with knowledge in the last 5 to 10 years, where filmmakers have this access to unbelievable knowledge, that we may have never had before, right? I was just watching a video from a director on how to direct actors, right? And just his experiences, and seeing,
Mm.
hearing him talk about how to approach an actor versus all the other technical parts on set is completely different, and it just, I think that's such an amazing
Mm.
time we live in, where if you want to learn something,
Yeah.
you have the ability to do it. And um,
Yeah.
so I think that's so cool to hear that you guys have like really taken that, opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and I think but I remember also like back in high school taking a Spanish class, but never actually getting to use Spanish, and so you don't actually learn it. Just because you're in the class doesn't mean you learned it. And I think the cool part with this is like we're learning things, and then that week we're applying it. We're in meetings where I'm like, oh, that's what you meant in the waterfall of how you break down, how it's going to pay out investors. Like, but if we would have just learned it in a class but never had got to experience it, I think that's been the key too, is being able to actually use it.
Yeah.
And kind of going off of that, I think for all the people out there who want to make films, what are the things that you guys are learning that actually help make a successful film? And I did want to I know we've had some conversations too about just the being realistic with what your film is worth too, and all that. So maybe we could dive into that. But yeah, I just would love to hear just some of the things that you guys are learning that really help make a film successful, creatively, but also just financially.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, we could bullet point a bunch of those and then go into more ones that you're more interested, maybe. But I think a couple of things stand out to me. First is one is I think it's wise to have multiple projects going on at any given time, because these are such a long process. And we've also met people who, if it's their only project, it's they hold it so tightly that you kind of like crushes all the joy out of it, and everybody in there feels the pressure of like, this has to be made. And especially when you're talking about things that cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions or tens of millions dollars, like the chances of them getting made in the time we think are pretty low. And so I just say, for one, it's smart to have multiple projects. The moment a writer's done with a script and feels like they're ready to start getting feedback, I would say move on to the next one. And it doesn't mean you just leave that. It just means take the pressure off of like, that needs to get made now, because the reality is it's going to get better over time. The more people that read it, the more feedback you give. So the longer you can make something, and the only way you can do it, the better. But the only way you can do that is to have probably more projects going on at any given time. Morgan, I mean, I'll also just say, I think having we've learned a lot about the value that actors bring to a product, to the actual end product. Meaning the same exact movie could cost $1 million to make, or it could cost $3 million to make, depending on what actors are in that. And that actually might be worth it. It might actually be worth it to have those two actors in it and add, $2 million to that budget, because at the end of the day, even if the same exact script takes place, we've just learned that there is value in a general audience knowing that face, knowing that name, for them to be able to give a chance to watch. So we've been learning a lot in a handful of projects about the value of actors.
Right. Yeah, because we've also, that's also so much of a project or a finished film is realized in the international market. And so it's probably like a 75. I mean, it's not really 75-25, but like maybe 20, you'll make 35% of your budget back domestically, and then about 75% of the budget internationally. So like it really, that sellability of the actor really matters. So that's I think, but also story. I know I said that, but there's a couple of scripts that we've been working on with writers, and we're a year into the process of refining the script and continuing to refine it, and working with writers who are willing to take notes and take feedback and make revisions. We've also offered some feedback on a couple of scripts to people who were like, I think it's good. I'll wait for, the actor to give me feedback. And we're like, cool, good luck. Go do that. Because you're asking us to produce it, but we're willing. A producer doesn't get paid until the project is actually like shooting and or done in some instances if you take a deferment. And so it's like you're as a producers, we're going to invest all of our time and energy and actually spend our money to developing something. Like, we should have the ability to speak into the story and to help make it the best, because like I said, you can have good actors, like decent actors, and a good script, and you'll have like a decent movie, like a B-rated movie. But if you have good actors and a bad script, you will have a horrible movie. Like, good actors can't a bad script. And so I think like being willing to take the time to refine the script is so important, because as soon and spend the time in pre-production, whether that's really working with the director and the cinematographer on like the shot list and all of that, because as soon as principal photography day one starts, it's like it's like a train and you can't stop it. So you have to have everything lined up ahead of time and put the time and the effort in. And along, Dave said, I mean, one of my classes, this is kind of really dismal, but they're like 1 out of 10 projects you have in development will actually get realized and made. And I think that's probably more at like a studio level, just because there's so many things that can kill it. Probably in the independent world, I don't think it's that dismal because usually there's people who are willing to work for less, and there's passion projects and things like that. But yeah, you kind of have to have a lot of things, a lot of irons in the fire, for sure.
Yeah.
When I think as producers, you guys are putting your reputation on the line too, because you're working with investors and there's a lot of money. I think it's like when you're, as a filmmaker, you're kind of in this creative mode and this ambition of making the film. And then when it comes down to it, it's like hundreds to thousands of dollars to millions of dollars. And once that money starts filtering in, you're like, oh, this is actually real tangible money. And we really have to honor and respect the people's money that we're using and do things wisely, bring on the right people, actors, story, everything, to make sure you're not just making a good movie, that you're actually really honoring these investors and trying to bring their money back.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it. Is it's an investment. Like, almost all the money you get is an investment for somebody. And so we look at it as art, but they're looking at it as an investment. Morgan helped bring $2 million to a movie by bringing in investors to a movie recently. And the amount of pressure she feels of like, that movie better make its money back, because that person I know, and I vouched for it, and I looked at their financials, I looked at their distribution plan, and I think it's a good investment. But it's still a couple $1 million that, as a producer now, you have vouched for that whole 200 person team who worked on this film, that it's going to actually produce the kind of film that, it's going to get out there and make you money, or at least give you back your money. I think filmmakers can forget that. Yeah.
Yeah, Dave, right on that note, how do you guys balance the relationship between artists and producers and money, right? Like, you hear these stories all the time of directors having these grand ideas, wanting to push something that they really feel is going to, be there, but the studio kind of doesn't want to maybe make the risk or take those things. I mean, I think of like Zack Snyder and that whole Snyder cut and like, some of that kind of stuff, but also like as a, I was uh, just, I shot my first movie last year, and that relationship between the producer and me as the DP and the toys I wanted to use, or the days, the amount of time I wanted to take on a certain scene, to do this kind of thing. There's always this kind of like a little bit of this, there's obviously, we want to be like this, but can you talk about that
Yeah.
relationship and just that balance you guys have to play, to one, be able to honor your investors, but also to make the best piece of art possible.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say something real quick. I think in an ideal world, we work really hard as producers so that the creatives can be creative and they don't have to think about it, right? Like a very simple example of that is the other day we had this, a read through of a script, getting ready to shoot a short film with the team here. And Morgan and I were, by that point, all we're doing is like, hey, do you guys need coffees? Morgan went and got in and out for them. We had a great home that was clean, that was ready for them to meet in. And, because our whole job is just to like work our butts off to make sure that the people who are best at what they do, the actors, the director, the DP who's sitting in there already thinking about it. We did a location scout before that. Like they get to just do what they're best at. That's a producer's job in an ideal world, is that we work our butts off so that they get to just do it, and that we don't, we're not in those conversations at all, because we trust that you're gonna do the thing you're best at.
Right. But then there's
And I know, there we go. This is why, yes, exactly. I knew you would. That's just great.
And then there's also the reality that there is a set amount of money. And so like I had no budget for that. And so when we came down to it, like it's a student film, and it's, that we were going to get paid not very much anyways for producing, but we cut out we are now doing it for free and volunteering, because we care more about what's going to be on screen than getting, a few $100s for producing. So we're like, take that, let's put that towards the budget. Plus Dave had to like call this church and finagle, like was trying to talk to him about the location fee, and they weren't going to budge. So like grateful now that, so at the end of like, really our job too is to say, you have this amount of money, where do you want to spend it? It's like, you can make anything for anything. It's just, how is it going to look? Like, you can do a car crash with a real car, or you can do it with a miniature. They're going to look different. They could accomplish maybe kind of the same thing, but not, it's like, but do we have the finances to pull that off? We may have to go with a plan B. What could that look like? And how can we meet in the middle and compromise? And if you want this, then we're going to have to take away from somewhere else, because we have this much. So where are we going to take away from? And so
is that typically the director making that those choices? Because I'm wondering, like, how are you deciding? Does props get X amount, or are we doing this on set deck, or are we going to pay this actor way more? How are you making those decisions?
Yeah, I would say like from when we first start with the budget, we're kind of going through and creating like what would be our best educated guess of what this line item category is going to take. Sometimes doing our due diligence of like researching and, getting some quotes, but kind of just creating categories. And then as it gets refined, it is talking like and I would say before we even go into a project, we're making sure that like the director and the producer have the same vision for what it's going to look like. So, and how they're going to accomplish it. And, if a producer is looking for a director, we would never go into a meeting and tell the director, this is what we're looking for. We would kind of almost like interview the director, say, how do you've read the script? Tell us what you envision. How do you see this playing out? What do you expect? And then we get to say, does that align with where we're thinking this is going, or is it not? Because we don't want to bring somebody on and tell them we're like on your vision if we're really not. So if our visions align for how we want it to end up, then we would, work together. And hopefully at that point, we're also headed on the same track. But, inevitably you're going to have those parts where you like, I really am wanting this. And you're like, yeah, but we can't, are you going to go find more funding? Because, if they're willing to go, hey, yeah, I'm personally going to go find more funding, or I'll take, a cut in my fee as a director because I want this, then great, that's the compromise. But there has to be the give and the take. So I'd say once it gets to the more technical stuff, it would be conversations with directors, hey, you're saying you want this, but we can't. So
yeah, I think also people don't realize often with producers, they've been on projects for months, if not years, before anybody else gets hired, because you've been working on this thing forever. I mean, Morgan always brings up when a film wins Best Picture, it's the producer who gets Best Picture. It's not the director, it's not the writer, it's not you share that, but it is the producer. And the reason is because they've often seen that vision for 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, and we're not getting paid. And, so you need to have that, you better really believe in that vision for a long time, because you're working for free forever. Yeah.
So I think it's so interesting, you look at directors and I feel like, you kind of see that they have this creative kind of bend to them and so on and so forth. You look at gaffers and, they got this, they're super technical. And so you can almost down the line look at the kind of generally, it's generalizing, but the people on set and they have their kind of the way they're bend. I'm so fascinated by producers because legitimately, I don't know what box to put people like you in. What do you think? And I know, again, it's across the board and people have different, strengths and whatever, but what do you guys think makes a good producer? And even if maybe someone who's wanting to get into that, are there certain traits? Are there certain kind of, maybe personalities or whatever the case might be that kind of lend themselves to being able to handle all of the things that you guys are talking about, right? You guys have to understand the creative part of it, but you also, to some degree, maybe understand a lot of the technical, but then you're, money and business, all this different stuff that, as a director, as a DP, sometimes we're not thinking about it at all. We're just the shot, is it pretty? You know what I mean? I want it to be as pretty as possible. And you guys have to make so many people happy. I'm just curious, traits as far as what makes good producers, or is that something that's learned? That's something that just kind of you're born with? I'm just fascinated by you guys. What do you guys see that makes good producers?
Well, we just recently had somebody who told us, man, I'm a producer, but I don't like numbers. And we're like, well, then you're not a producer. I don't know what, and it's not that personally I love numbers, but I can look at something and understand it. I would say, you have to literally be a jack of all trades. You need to understand that whole process. But I think if you're going to have a few key things you're good at, one is you need to be really good with people, because ultimately you're the only person who's working with everybody. You're the only person on that set that literally has talked to every single person, from the investment to locations to PAs to whatever it is. Everybody else works with their people. Even a director doesn't talk to half the people we'll talk to. And so you need to be good with people. I think you need to be you just need your crap together. You need to be a person who, who knows how to I really that sounds silly, but we know people who aren't, who their life is kind of a mess and they're kind of a mess and they're kind of and you're that you need to, there's a lot of organization that goes into this. There's a lot of detail. There's a lot, and you need to be creative as well, or at least appreciate creatives. The last thing I'll say about that is the one thing I have to work on most, the thing I'm not good at my worst, I look at this very practically and not allow directors or the creative types or our actors to just be them, because I'm thinking numbers, I'm thinking so if I have anything that I need more help on when I'm at my worst, it's to appreciate that side of it, because ultimately this is an art. It is, well, ultimately it's a product. That's the hard part. It really is, it is entertainment, and that's the product, but it is an art that creates that. And that's the thing that's hardest, the thing that doesn't come as naturally to me.
Is that why you yelled at me on take 10? Is that sure?
Yes. Yes, Yeah, it is.
No, you got the shot. Move on. I was like, dang it, Dave.
It was a sight to behold. I literally remember Steve going, I think Dave's going to have a cow.
I came up and whispered. I was like, "What? Do you remember what I really said?" I came up and I whispered, and I go, "Hey," because I was acting as the first AD that day, so I was keeping us on. So I just came up to him real quietly and I said, "Hey, I don't feel very respected by you right now."
Yeah,
because we're friends outside of this.
It was a good way to do it. Yeah,
it wasn't like you're a jerk. I was like, I'm not really feeling respect. I'm not feeling like my job's being respected. And you were like, okay, good. And then he totally caught up, and within an hour we had made up in a couple hours. It was great.
But you need to have those conversations as a producer and a director. You have to have that, like Jordan, you're saying, that friction. It's just going to naturally come on set.
Right.
But it's like, okay, we need to respect and honor each other's roles, and I have to respect, hey, we're on a budget, we're on a time frame, like we need to keep moving forward, where I can kind of lose track. And so anyways,
and know what it needs in that moment. Like sometimes it can be a stern, like, hey, we got to go, or like in that moment where Dave was like, hey, listen, you know what I mean? Like obviously it was stern, but it wasn't like you didn't blow up. Like it was like, we got to get moving, and you knowing how to reach your people, how to get them along. I think that's just, that's so crazy.
Yeah, I would say, well, that kind of the managerial skills, like just managing people and knowing how to, like what Dave would say, talk to people, I think plays into the roles, but also realizing that you have the authority to set the stage for how the production's going to go, right? And what you want set to look like. So just realizing that from day one, you really, what you say and how you conduct the set really matters and will determine what like the atmosphere of the set is huge. Attention to detail. So much of it is just crunching numbers, looking at budgets, looking at finance plans, recruitment schedules. Like it's very, some of it, you better really understand and enjoy doing spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets. So that is one thing. And there are different types of producers, like we are, I think, because of our background, because of being entrepreneurs and doing, like, having several startups and being in the creative space, like I think we can do it all. But there are producers that are just creative producers, and there's just producers that are, physical producers, and they just come on, for production and on set and stuff. So, and then there's development producers who are just working at the front part of. So, but for us, I think somehow all the things we've done and all of our yeses up until this point have given us the skill set to kind of do it all.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just gonna give compliment. Yeah. I think just a compliment to you guys is you guys are amazing at all those things, and I think for me as a director, one of the biggest things that I want a characteristic trait of a producer is just to keep their cool on set and keep a good environment, like a creative environment of like love and creativity and all that stuff. And you guys do that really well, because I've worked with producers a lot where it's just like they're like stressed out and their stress is like projecting on myself and everybody, and I'm like pretty sensitive, so it takes the creativity just like it kind of just it's not so you guys do that really well of just looking at all the logistics, like all that, but you're also keeping your cool in the midst of it and create a good environment for everybody to work in, which I think is a huge great characteristic trait.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks. Yes. That is very beneficial and not only just on set, I think, but even that whole that's the weirdest part about filmmaking. Everybody thinks of just like the 1 month or the 3 weeks. And it's like, that was years before and will be 6 months after. And then maybe even years. As producers, we're attached to that thing for 15 years later. Like there's a bank account that needs to be up
on it every year, and up the LLC and pay all the state filings for it every year,
Yeah. Wow.
It's like,
and people don't think about that, right? Like that we're going to be, so we better really like this thing, because 10 years from now, when you haven't even thought about that movie, there is a producer that is making sure that people are getting residuals, that people are getting, like, their taxes are being filed for that thing. Like Yeah.
Wow.
Big,
Wow, yeah,
big
for
responsibility.
sure.
Can you guys hear that clock? No.
Oh
No.
yeah,
All of a
subtly I
sudden
can
my
hear a
brain
little.
like latched on, and I was like, oh no, we're gonna have to get some ambient sound after this so that
Hold for tone.
in the
Yeah,
edit.
yeah, yeah.
Hold for tone. So good.
You know, one of my kind of last questions for you guys is, yeah, I think just the importance of being in the film industry. I think there's a lot of people who have stereotypes around the film industry, and especially just people of faith. I think they see Hollywood and film as like bad and don't want anything to do with the industry. And so I'd love just to kind of hear you guys. You guys are in the thick of the film industry. You guys are in Hollywood. Talk about just for you guys personally, like the importance of just being a part of this industry and what that means.
Well, we don't know anybody that's like sucking baby's blood or, whatever else they want to say about this industry. So haven't seen that. Um, no, it's hard because I think it's so easy to point fingers at this industry, but it's also like the majority of these people are just hardworking individuals, like all of our neighbors, and those are a lot of other our neighbors are like set designers and construction and just crafty and just getting up at the crack of dawn to be on sets and just working their butts off to like blue collar working and like so the idea that Hollywood is this like for a certain percentage there is like an elite world, but for the most part it's just hardworking individuals who are grinding, who are taking chances, who are risking, who we just went to a rough screening the other night of people who were like, we put our life savings into this film, our kids may not go to college, but like we want to make this movie, we've like this is our passion, and they've risked it all. So it's like people who believe in the stories and the power of film to like take these risks. um and that's something I think to be admired and to be championed, and not put into a box or labeled, because it's always easy to think of something else as other until you're in it, and then it's like, oh, it's not those people, it's just these are they're all these people that are names and faces with stories and backgrounds and dreams and ambitions and hopes, and it's like that's who the film industry is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
So good.
one of the examples I think has been so weird for people outside of LA to hear the strikes that have been happening, especially when they talk to actors like not getting paid enough. Everybody's like, they just have this picture of actors who are all just wealthy, right? And it's like literally 99% of actors can bear, I think it's 95% of actors, it can't be their full-time job. So like 5% of actors, it's their full-time job. 1% is actually, or less than a percent, is actually the people we think of as, oh, they're so wealthy. And writers for all these shows, even if they've written your favorite shows, a lot of times they have a second job. And so we've built this picture of what Hollywood looks like. And the reality is the vast majority are very normal people. There is no agenda other than they're all pursuing this job that they all had a dream, and most of them didn't grow up in LA. They moved here so that they could do this. And so they're very, very normal people, who, are all pursuing this thing that they all love. And lastly, I would just say the biggest agenda people have, even executives in LA, and I'm not saying that there aren't any agendas. I'm sure there are some, but I would say their main agenda is to make money. That's their agenda. So if the public wants different things, watch those different things because they will make more of them. And when you don't watch things that you think are great, but you don't actually go to the theater to watch, they aren't going to make them. And so their agenda is to make money because this is ultimately products that they're creating for the whole world. So if we don't like what they're making, just keep watching things and promoting things and inviting your friends to things when they make things that you like. They'll make all the kind of films you love if a lot of people like them. I promise.
And to be fair, I think a lot of people aren't honest in the Christian world. So, I mean, I think a lot of people are like, oh, I want to support this. But like, I even know several family members who are like, I mean, my parents are probably not going to listen to this podcast, but they go to like, maybe they will, but you know, they like,
We'll cut this part out.
you can keep it in because I would say the same thing to their face and they would own it too. But like, they go to a pretty like,
I love your dad, by the way.
yeah, they go to a really conservative church, and you know, and they do care about the stuff the Christian industry puts out, and they'll go see it. But they like, you know, they were like Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, Ozarks. They just finished Yellowstone in 1980. I mean, like they're watching all of those. So I'm like, also, I think we also fool ourselves if we don't admit that like the Christian world wants to be entertained as much as, you know, the non, I don't know. I just don't necessarily think like separating it is beneficial. Like, let's just make, and also it makes me think of that quote, like you'd rather have an R-rated truth than a G-rated lie. It was where I think Ken Geyer said that in a book, but it's like, why are we not willing to go to the hard, sticky, messy kind places and look at the beauty and the art in those? Like even like I'm considering producing, I've been asked to help produce this movie that like I'm sure Christian people will look at and be like, I can't believe you're going to do that. But I read the script. It's pretty intense. It has stuff that I would have like, I think in a few years ago would have been like, no, but I'm like, why would I want to be a part of this? What is the messaging? Why do I think it's important? What is this? What's the bigger picture? And I do want to be a part of it. So it'll be interesting if things fall into place with that. But, you know, I've just had to ask myself, like on a case by case basis, like, what is this accomplishing? What is my attachment to it going to like do or limit, and just make the decisions accordingly.
So good.
So good.
Well, do you guys have anything that you guys want to, just for the audience, like any last thoughts or wisdom, like anything that you guys want to share?
I think it's something we've said for years, but I think you just have to look dumb until it works. I do. I just think this job doesn't even hardly feel like a job a lot of days. That you feel dumb, you know, and until something works. And I think the more people you can be around who are actually doing these things, the more normal it becomes and the more possible it becomes. Otherwise, these, especially film in general, just feels so far off for so many people. It doesn't feel like a real job. So look dumb, feel dumb until it works.
Also risk. I think everything worthwhile requires risk. So, you know, when we were saying when we told our parents we're gonna move to LA, what did my dad say? No risk it, no biscuit. Is that like, I don't know.
That's a saying.
That is a saying, yeah. So risk has always been really important to us, which was, it kind of goes hand in hand with looking dumb, like being willing to look dumb. And then I think the other thing is like say yes, which is also a form of risk, but also it could be yes to things like meetings and opportunities and giving of your time, and just willing to serve other people because, you know, yeah, I'll do that thing on your project and you don't have to pay me, or, you know, that sometimes I'm really bad at the whole idioms, and Dave knows that, but like, what is it? The rising tide floats all boats. Is that one good?
Yes.
I got it.
That's good. That's the right one.
It's because we're all in this. And so, as you know, as we help each other, collaborate, work on each other's projects, we grow as filmmakers and artists and creatives, you know, we're all just going to elevate together. And so,
it's good.
And yeah, just be willing to say yes.
So good. Well, thank you guys so much for being a part of this.
Dude, you want to wrap out, or
did you say rap? We have to rap?
Wrap out?
You guys want to do a wrap out?
Yeah.
Like, somebody's
you start.
For your last, is there last kind of word here? Is there, where can we find you guys, for people who are listening? And man, obviously a lot of stuff that you guys drop is inspiring. People who want to continue to follow along. This is kind of like your opportunity to anything you guys want to promote, projects, businesses, anything like that, anything that you guys want to, where can we find you guys and stay connected with you and follow along on what you're doing?
Our production company is called Unicorn Trap Productions. So it's trapping magic. So unicorntrap.com is where you can go, and you could contact us there if you want. That's probably the best. I mean, we have a lot of other personal socials and all that kind of stuff, but as far as production goes, yeah, I think go to unicorntrap.com and
Instagram is Hansow Family at Hansow Family, because our personal ones, we're not super awesome about staying in that rat race, but we'll do the family one. And I don't know when is this coming out? Is it like, is this how?
That's a good question.
This is a great question.
Okay.
Great question. It could be a couple years from now. No, it'll probably be out of this next month.
Okay.
Yeah, this next quarter for sure.
Well, because I asked that because Dave's been, working on we've been working on another business that we had a soft launch and then realized we need to completely revamp. But we're excited about it, and it's Real Pitch. It's real, EEL, real, like like a film reel. And so realpitch.co, and it's a designing platform for pitch decks for film and television and whatever.
And it's getting completely revamped in the next 2 weeks, so in a completely different model. And so, by the time this comes out, check out realpitch.co. For sure. And it'll be, there's really nothing like it. So
we'll make sure to drop all these links and all that stuff. All the links and stuff we'll drop in the show notes and description for you guys. But make sure to check that out.
That's awesome.
Well, it's good to see you all. And thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you for your time. You guys are awesome. Absolutely. And bye.
This is it.
You really are doing it. We're coming up with that.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Awesome. We'll see you guys.
See ya.
Take care.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Morgan.
Thank
Later.